You know, this is the one set of videos that I do that I wish I could do live. If I had enough followers, I would do it live. But I don't have enough followers, and I probably never will. Plus the fact that I don't have the uh, uh, backbone, um, legalese to do it live. Although we could do it, this guy I know, he watches it on with headphones, and you watch it on your end, and then you talk about it. You don't see the screen, you don't see what he's watching, but you watch your own screen. But that would be one way to do it live. But again, I don't have that many followers. I don't have anybody that would show up. And by the way, we're at the end here of Star Trek Next Generation. We've only got like 2 episodes left after this. And in a week or so, then after that, we'll start with Voyager. Someone suggested I do Deep Space Nine. Unfortunately, I don't own Deep Space Nine. So if you could please hit the like and subscribe. This is the D. Louise book series. I am Christina, K-I-N-T-N-A. I'm a series person. I like to do series. I like to watch the character progression from episode to episode. So we are up to season 7, disc 6, episode 275, Emergence. And it seems like, if I'm not wrong, the holodeck is taking over. And the holodeck is taking over the world. Only if they knew what AI could do today. If they could go back and redo this episode with AI, you think it would get worse? You have to let me know. So there is no voiceover here, and it seems that Picard and Data are on the holodeck, and they're doing a Shakespeare play. So that's where we start. Let's see. I am having the worst trouble today. So, I'm not going to go through this whole section. They're doing Shakespeare. It's too dark. I can't see. There are some scary movies out there, and they always get really dark, and the person's... You can't see. If you watch the television, how many people, raise your hand out there. If you can't see what's going on, you turn it off. The characters are doing stuff. They can see each other. They're doing their scenes, their dramatic stuff. But you can't see it. There was a vampire show. It lasted 1 season, I think. I'm not even sure it made it 1 season, 2 episodes. I don't know. Not that long. And they were doing all these creepy scenes, but you couldn't see anything because it was so dark. So, we can't see anything. They're acting out Shakespeare. I don't know why they have to do Shakespeare in the dark, but they're doing Shakespeare in the dark. Because apparently Data can see really well, and he doesn't realize that the lights were off. So, they're doing Shakespeare's Tempest, Act 5, Scene 1. So that's what they're doing on the holodeck. So, they're discussing the play and how to proceed with it. When, out of nowhere, they hear a train, and they're looking into the train's headlights. And they tell the computer to end program, and it doesn't end program. It continues. Data does push Picard out of the way, and he is injured. So there is something wrong with the holodeck. Safety protocols and whatever else is going on. But there's something wrong with the holodeck. So they come out of the holodeck, and Picard is injured. He's got a cut on his cheek. Data checks the computer program, And he says that the train we encountered was from one of Dr. Crusher's holodeck programs. It was a recreation of the Orient Express, a train which traveled from Paris to Istanbul from the late 19th century until. Yes, Data, I know about the Orient Express, but what is it doing on Prospero's Island? What's it doing in Shakespeare's play? There appears to be a malfunction in the holodeck database retrieval program. The two programs have been temporarily linked together. Is it possible that the malfunction will affect the other holodecks as well? It's a possibility. I will need to run diagnostics to be certain. Very good, Data. Shut down the other holodecks until you finish, just to be on the safe side. I never realized you were interested in trains. Are you aware at its peak that the Orient Express carried more than 10,000 people a year? It isn't really the train I'm interested in. What then? It's the experience. The Orient Express is romantic, mysterious, and an elegant way to see exotic places and meet fascinating people. Do you know that at one time on one trip, both Sigmund Freud and Gertrude Stein just happened to be in the same car? They ended up having dinner together that night. I wonder what they talked about. Why don't you take a trip and find out? Riker to Picard. Picard here. All sections ready for you to survey, sir. I'm on my way. Don't forget the trip, John Luke. Think about it. You'll never know who you'll meet on the Orient Express. So then we have a captain's voice overview. Uh, Captain's log, stardate 47869.2. After weathering an unexpected magnascopic storm in the Mechador sector, we are continuing our search for new Federation colony sites. Riker says, I don't think there's a possibility of developing sites in this region. Most of the stars are main sequence binaries. There are no M-class planets. Well, let's move on to another survey region. Have stellar cartography beginner and the ship jerks. Data reports the ship has moved into warp. Who gave that command? A data says apparently no one. Helm and navigation controls are not functioning. Our speed is now 7.3 and holding. Picard context engineering, and we do the back and forth stuff. That's always hard to do with this stuff. So he talks to Geordi, and Geordi says, I don't understand. The impulse system suddenly cut out, and the warp drive just kicked in. Riker asks him if he could take the engines offline. Geordi says he's working on it. Picard says, Mr. Data, what is our heading? Bearing 187 Mark 4. I'm unable to determine our destination. However, we are heading away from the Mechador sector. And Geordi says, Captain, the computer's locked out all propulsion. Geordi says, I can't access any of the overrides. Geordi says, if you want us to stop, I'll have to do an emergency core shutdown. Riker says that would leave us without a warp core for more than a week. Begin the procedure, Mr. Worf, Picard says. Data says we are no longer at warp. Impulse power has resumed. All systems returned to normal. Where are we? Data says we are approximately 30 billion kilometers from our original position. And Picard says, well done, Mr. LaForge. Now, I want to know how the computer knows he's talking to engineering. He's not tapping anything. He's not going, hey, computer, connect me to engineering. None of that stuff. They're just talking to the air. And they automatically assume the person down in engineering is going to hear them. It's not like, hey, Miss A. Miss A-L-E. That lady that's in our houses now. It's not like they had her back then. It's not like they even dreamed of her back then. But they're just talking to the air. And they're automatically talking to different sections of the It's just that he just talks to Jordy, and the computer automatically has him talking in engineering. Can the whole ship hear him? Does the whole ship hear the conversation? Is it just regulated to the bridge in engineering? Pondering questions. So Jordy has come up to the bridge. Have you found anything out? Jordy says, only that we seem to have more than one mystery here. We don't know why the ship jumped to warp, but it looks like we're lucky it did. There was a theta flux distortion building up around the ship. Why didn't our sensors alert us? Our sensors were never designed to detect theta flux distortions, and yet there is a record of the distortion in the sensor log. That's the other mystery. One fact is clear, data says. However, the distortion was growing in strength. If we had remained in our original position 1.7 seconds longer, the distortion would have ruptured our warp core. If the Enterprise hadn't jumped into warp when we did, we would have been blown to pieces, Geordi says. So Data and Geordi go into the Jeffries too. I just don't get it, Geordi says. What would cause the engines to suddenly jump into warp? Perhaps the engines were activated by a random power fluctuation. Geordi says, which occurred just in time to save the ship? Data says, it's improbable, but it is possible. I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to stop believing in luck. There's another possibility. Yeah, what's that? The sensors apparently detected a dangerous anomaly that threatened the Enterprise. It is possible they triggered a safety device which caused the ship to avoid destruction. Yeah, but there's no link between the warp engines and the sensors. And they find something different in the tubes. So, my fellow Star Trek peeps, has AI taken over the Enterprise? Excuse me. They find all that. So then we talk to Riker on the bridge. We found these nodes in several systems around the ship. Some level or another, they're all connected. These nodes were linking the sensors to our warp coil and defensive systems. We believe this is why the ship jumped to warp. When the sensors detected danger, the defensive systems reacted to the threat and activated the warp engines to protect us. Where did these nodes come from? Riker asks. Data says it's possible that the magnetoscopic storm we recently experienced had an unexpected effect on the ship's systems. Geordi says whatever they came from, they seem to be multiplying. As they increase, Data says, it will become progressively more difficult to control the ship. What do you suppose we do? Riker says. Well, getting rid of them isn't going to be so easy. When we attempted to examine the circuitry of one of the nodes, it generated a force field to keep us out. Whatever's going on, our first priority is to get back control of the ship. Agreed, Data says. All of the nodal connections intersect in holodeck 3. It appears to be the focal point of some kind. We might be able to find a way to use the holodeck circuitry to disable nodes permanently. All right, let's do it. So they're going to use artificial intelligence to get rid of the artificial intelligence. You think that's how it's going to be? You think they saw this coming 20, 30 years later? So they go onto the holodeck. And it looks a little like the Hotel Royale they were in a few seasons ago. But anyway, I believe they're on the Orient Express. And it's Worf, Data, and Riker that are here. They see people playing cards, people doing a jigsaw puzzle. The crane conductor asks them for tickets. There's a guy, a rustic looking guy, that says, I've never even been away from home. Now I'm going all the way to Veriform City. The conductor tells him to enjoy his trip. So they're watching all this stuff go on. And then Data says, I've located a large concentration of nodes behind this wall. They appear to be connected directly to the holodeck main power coupling. All right, go ahead and depolarize the entire grid. The power grid is located behind this deck, sir. The conductor comes over and asks them for their tickets, and then he tells them they need to leave. If they don't have tickets, they get into a little scuffle. Let's see that. See if I can find it. Here's the conductor confronting them, trying to get them to leave the train. And somebody comes up, an engineer. Let's see if I can find him. So the conductor comes up and says, I don't think you folks belong on this train. And the engineer says, hold it. You leave these people alone. They're only trying to help. The conductor says, go back to the engine. This doesn't concern you. The engineer says, they're all trying to hijack the train. And then the rustic guy from before says, if you're the engineer, who's driving? And then the gangster shoots the engineer in the back. And then the console explodes by Jody. See, I wish we could show all this. It's hard to stop and stop and stop and stop and stop and start. I wish we could just talk about it in one fluid motion. I wish we could just run it and talk about it as it happens. But we can't do that. So, as the guy shot the other guy, Jordy was working in engineering, and the console pushes back at him, and he falls on the floor, and this is all the smoke from the stuff. So his stuff is burned out. Oh, I hate when they do this. Jordy's in engineering and he's checking stuff out, and then they're back on the holodeck, and then we're back with Jordy, and then we're back with the holodeck, and then we're back with the holodeck. It's just I can't keep up with it all. So Data says we have changed directions, and the conductor says we're now on the right track. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on our way. The gangster says I was right. He was trying to make off with my brick. Conductor says you took care of that. We can't afford to lose. Now, why are you people going to leave? Are we going to have to throw you off the train? Data says, Commander, according to my tricorder, the holodeck safeties have been disengaged. The weapons here are lethal. So then they're back in engineering. Data says the number of systems now being affected by the nodes has increased considerably. Sensors, engines, replicators, propulsion, they're all working together now, almost independently of the main computer, and the nodes link them as well through the holodeck. But why the holodeck, Riker says? It doesn't make any sense. Commander, I believe what happens on the holodeck has a direct effect on the ship. When we attempt to destroy the nodes, the characters on the train responded almost immediately to stop us. And when the engineer tried to protect us, one of the characters shot at him. Data says the conductor then signaled for the train to change directions at approximately the same time. Then the Enterprise took off in a new direction, Geordi says. Are you saying the ship is under the control of the holodeck? Not precisely, Geordi says. Data says. Geordi, does the configuration of the connection nodes look familiar to you? Yeah, it looks like the structure of your positonic brain. That is correct. It would appear the nodes are in the process of creating a rudimentary neural net. Data, what are you suggesting? Unlikely as it may sound, I believe the Enterprise may be forming an intelligence. What did I say? What did I say? AI. Didn't I say AI? They're forming AI. The computer's forming AI. What would they do today if they redid this episode today with today's technology and today's graphics and computers to do the holodeck in a better way, they could do all sorts of things with the holodeck now. The blue screens, green screens, they could do anything. They could do computer stuff. So, they knew in 1995, 4 or 5, that all this was going to happen, that we were going to have artificial intelligence. There's a movie out there. It's really old. 80s maybe. War Games, I think. Not Matthew Broderick, but one of those younger peoples. I don't think it was Matthew Broderick. It was somebody else. He's older now. Of course, he's older now. But there was a computer decided to take over and think for itself and do war games for itself. So they saw artificial intelligence coming. So what are we going to do? So Data is giving a presentation in the observation lounge. So he's showing them the map of the human neocortex, and he's showing them a cross section of his own. And this schematic of the connection nodes linking the ship systems. I believe some of the neural matrix is forming on the ship. It's relatively primitive, but it has intelligence. Troy asks, how could this happen? I believe it's an eminent property. Picard says, explain. Data says, complex systems can sometimes behave in ways that are entirely unpredictable. The human brain, for example, might be described in terms of cellular functions and neurochemical reactions, but that description does not explain human consciousness, a capacity that far exceeds neural functions. Consciousness is an eminent property. In other words, something that's more than sum of its parts. Exactly, Data says. How does that explain what's happening to the Enterprise? Dr. Crusher asks. The Enterprise contains a vast database of information which is managed by a sophisticated computer. This complex system gives the ship many of the characteristics of a biological organism. That's true, Riker says. It sees with its sensors, it talks with its communications. In a sense, it almost reproduces with replicators. And you think the ship has somehow gone beyond these functions? And Picard asks, and Data says, yep. And apparently Worf is in the room too. He says, so what does the ship want? Where is he taking us? I believe the key to understanding the ship's behavior lies on the holodeck. All the connecting nodes intersect at that location. It's clearly some kind of processing center. Almost like an imagination, Captain. I'd like to go into the holodeck. I could interact with the characters and maybe find some clues that would help us to understand what's happening. And so he sends Data and Worf onto the holodeck to figure out what's happening. Now, if you're gonna go, I don't mean to put it this way, but to send a Klingon and Data into an Orient Express, why not send Crusher or Troy or Riker, people that know the history of the Orient Express and can maybe finagle with the characters, finish out some of the scenes maybe. I don't know, it just doesn't. I don't see a Klingon conforming to the Orient Express. I mean, it's possible. We'll see what happens. So this is going to be hard to show. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But apparently Troy goes with them. And she tries to join them in a puzzle they're putting that puzzle together. It was shown previously. They say they don't know what the picture is. She goes to the card game, and the gangster says no. And then she reaches for a brick. We'll have to look. This is gonna be hard. I can't stop. It's just. I wish I could play this live. So this is the card game. Why is the guy tied up? But anyways, she tries to join that, and they tell her no. She looks at the card game, the puzzle they're putting in, and they tell her she can't help there either. And I'm wondering if it's a composition of Data's brain. They're completing the pattern on the holodeck of the systems of the ship, and no one realizes it yet. Okay, I'm having a little computer issues today, but anyway, the back of the cards are the same as the puzzle. And apparently that's a gold brick, and when she touches it, they freak out and tell her to keep her hands off. So, I'm having trouble with computer today. I can't. Oh, so anyways, she talks to the guys about the brick, and the gangster said he has to get it to Keystone City. And she says, "What's a Keystone City?" And the gangster says that's where it all begins. And then Data says he's had access to the main power grid. And the conductor comes out and says, "Keystone City, next stop." And Worf tells him, "We don't want any trouble, we're simply passengers." "Well, then I wouldn't mind you showing me your tickets, right?" "Sorry, boys, you're getting off here." Gangster said, "This is my stop." "Wait, what happens at Kingstone City? Why are you taking the brick there?" And he leaves. Troy says we should follow the gangster. So they follow him into the subway. So they come up out of the subway, and they're following the gangster down the street. So Data's gonna work on the power grid while they go chase down the gangster. So then they get to the gangster, and there's a brick missing. And he says he's laying the foundation. And he puts the brick in the wall and leaves. Then Geordi reports to the captain that the Cargo Bay 5 started to depressurize, and they got everybody out in time, and they're still trying to figure out what happened. So then they find then they find this thing in the cargo bay. It's a 3D version of the puzzle they're building on the holodeck. So Troy and Worf go back to see Data, and Data says he's trying to depolarize the power grid, and he's holding the taxi cab, preventing the taxi cab from running him over. So then there's an earthquake on the holodeck, and the Enterprise shakes, and the holodeck shakes, and the brick wall comes down, and it says 1136. So they all decide we all need to get together and compare notes. Okay, so then they're all in the medical office. Troy's getting her face treated. Jody says, I'm betting it all has something to do with the object that's forming in Cargo Bay. I think he's right. Troy says, Captain, look at the common themes playing out on the holodeck. A puzzle being together, a foundation being laid, a paper doll being fashioned. They're all images of something being constructed, and some kind of object in the cargo bay that's being constructed atom by atom. What is the object? Picard asks. I have no idea. It's composed of silica, polymers, uranium, and a couple other compounds I haven't been able to identify. Picard says, Counselor, can you draw any other conclusion from your experience on the holodeck? The holodeck was fully metaphoric imagery, like it was having some kind of daydream. It may not make literal sense, but symbolically it probably has some kind of logic to it. The characters you spoke to, do they have any significance? Troy says, I think they represent different aspects of the ship. Engineer, for instance, may represent navigation. The gunslinger may be weapons. Is there any way that we can persuade them to give back control of the ship? I don't think it's possible to reason with them. Many of them are generally unaware of what's going on. It's as though the emergent intelligence is like an infant acting on impulse, trying to figure out itself as it goes. The only source of experience can draw on is through our holodeck program. Is there any way we can relate to them on our own level, find some way to influence their behavior, Picard says. Maybe there is. I'd like to go back. Counsel, we haven't been able to reestablish the safeties. The injuries you suffered on the holodeck weren't severe, but the next time they might kill you. I'm aware of that, Troy says. Very well, Counsel, go ahead. Bear in mind that whenever we have tried to hinder their efforts, we have failed. Maybe it's time we cooperate with the holodeck. Maybe. So, I'm not gonna. They go onto the train. They give the conductor their tickets, and they do the back and forth. And I'm just gonna redo it. I'm just gonna tell you because I don't want to. I'm having computer issues today. But so the conductor. Worf gives him the tickets. Then the conductor says, I guess I was wrong about you folks. Welcome aboard. The conductor tells them they're having some problems. The engine is running out of steam. Troy says, can we help? And the conductor says, I could use a strong pair of arms in the engine room. So Worf goes and helps shovel coal. And that Troy talks to a couple of different of the passengers. Then we're back at Worf doing the coal again. Then we're on the bridge. And Riker saying that the warp power appears to be coming back to normal. And Riker says our heading is Tambor 6. It's a white dwarf star. And then we're back in the train again with the holodeck, and Worf is still doing the call. And then we're back on the bridge. Riker says it's using a modified tractor beam to collect Veriton particles from the star. Veriton particles, Vertiform City, that's what the ship was looking for. The particles are being routed through the transporter system into Cargo Bay 5. So the object in the cargo bay is absorbing the Veriton particles. So it might be a life form. So Geordi's in the cargo bay, and the thing is growing. And he's talking to Picard and Riker, telling him the thing is growing. And they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth a few times. And then we end up on the holodeck. We get a picture of the tractor beam. There's the puzzle piece getting bigger, and the tractor beam suddenly stopped. This is hard. I don't know which one to go with. They go back and forth. Data says there's been an accident on the holodeck, sir. Has anything happened on the Enterprise? Yes, we've had a ship-wide shutdown. We've lost attitude control, and most systems are offline. You'd better take a look at this, Geordi says. When the particle beam cut off, the object was beginning to form a coherent energy matrix. Now, if these readings are accurate, I'd say the emission particles were almost organic. Are you suggesting the Enterprise is trying to create a life form? I think so. Will it survive? Well, its energy levels are dropping unless it gets an infusion of Veriton, and I mean soon. Captain, all our systems are back online and moving again. It's a warp 9. And they run back to the bridge. And the rustic guy says, that was close, wasn't it? Where are we going now? Well, New Veriform City, of course. Data says, Captain, the train has returned to normal. Our destination is New Vertiform City. And then we're on the bridge. And let's see what happens. So Picard says, Riker says, we're heading for Codana's system, another white dwarf star. Riker says, it's the nearest one to our last position. Jody says, Captain, we have a problem. Even at warp 9, the Codana system is over 12 hours from here. Will the object in the cargo bay survive that long? Yes, sir, but that's not the problem. The ship has diverted all of our systems to maximum propulsion, including life support. We have less than 2 hours of reserve oxygen. Mr. Data, we have to stop the Enterprise. That means you have to get control of the train. Understood. Picard says the ship is looking for Verticon particles and it believes the Cordana system is the closest source. Is there anything closer? White dwarf stars are the only natural sources of Vertiton particles, Geordi says. What about artificial ones? Can you create them? And then they go back to the holodeck, and then they're back on the bridge again. And Geordi says, I've now searched to MacPherson Nebula, which is a supernova remnant in the Daikon Alpha, which is a Class 9 pulsar. They're both fairly close to our current path, and either one could produce Verticon particles if we detonated a modified proton torpedo inside it. Vertitons usually occur in minuscule amounts. Do you think either of these phenomena could produce enough of them? Riker asked. It's really hard to say. I can't guarantee that we'll create them all. They gotta go through this angst again, blah, 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 blah. So they go to the new place. Then we go back to the train again. So they're telling the people on the train that we've got a shortcut to a new place. And then we're back on the bridge again. And they're gonna do the torpedoes. And then we're back on the bridge again, and the nodes are activating all over the ship. Our systems are beginning to recover. The bizarre lifts off the holodeck floor, flies off the ship. Everybody has champagne on the holodeck to celebrate. The captain says, the Enterprise is back under our control. All traces of the emergent intelligence are gone, and the object has disappeared into space. And we end the episode with Picard and Data on the holodeck continuing their experiment with Shakespeare. So that is the end of the episode. Well, next week we start part 1 of the 2-part series finale. It's going to be sad to see it go. Preemptive strike is next week. If you haven't watched my earlier videos, please go check all those out. If you haven't watched all my if then videos, please go check all those out. And if you could hit the like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Trying really hard here, just no one's seeing my channel. Have a good one.